Hey, my name is Ash T, and in another episode of the Dropouts, I have my good friend Christie Bahna, who went from being a lawyer to a comedian. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I met Christie in Pasadena Comedy, and we were both on the same set.
We were.
With Sean Fawaz was headlining, I think. Not headlining, but he was the host.
Yeah.
And we laughed at each other's jokes because we were dropouts.
Yeah. We were both like, oh my gosh. We were both corporate people, and now we're creative people.
We have similar backgrounds, maybe.
Yeah.
Immigrant families.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you born?
I was born in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. Two parents that were... Or what ethnicity?
Egyptian, yes.
Egyptian, and
what
were they working as?
My dad was a plastic surgeon, and my mom was doing economics and finance. And my dad ended up came from Egypt and moved to New York. Then he did his residency at UCLA, and he settled in LA. So I ended up being born right by UCLA.
Oh, wow. Okay, you're a unicorn. You were born in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
All right. So growing up, did you have dreams as a kid when you were 6 or 7? Did you know what you wanted to be?
Only nightmares, and we fixed that. No, I did not have any dreams of being in entertainment at all. I was always a performative child.
And you still are.
I'm still a performative child.
Yes.
I get that often. That's why I had to leave the professional workforce. No. Yeah, I did not. I always loved comedy and performing and any type of sort of theater. But I just was not. I was not a theater kid. I was a band kid.
A band kid?
Yeah, I was more into music. I did percussion for about 15 years, and did jazz drumming. I was in a bluegrass band. I sang, but that was always like on the side. Our law firm had a band, a funk band, and we would play against other law firms for charity, like in battles of the bands. And boy, oh boy, were we lawyers first and musicians second. But it was still fun.
So, but when you were a kid, did you feel like you wanted to be a musician? Was that...
No.
You had no idea what you wanted to be?
I had no idea.
Did your parents kind of like pressure you to be a doctor or a lawyer?
Yeah, I think my dad had his own practice, and so I think he was very much wanted me to follow in his footsteps and take on the family practice.
Well, did you have siblings to blow it off on?
No.
No.
I mean, I did
have
siblings I'm not an only child, but meaning they did not pick up the slack on that. My two older siblings did not want to do that either. So
you all were rebels. You said, no,
yeah,
we're not going to do this.
Yeah, and I was so rebellious. I was like, fuck you, Dad. I'm going to go to law school and make something of myself. Yeah, and he was like so disappointed. Yeah. So I rebelled by going to law school.
Interesting. Did you have any pressure from your mom to be anything?
Just a good Christian woman.
Okay.
That was it. She's like, I don't care what happens. Just be a good person and follow the Lord.
All right.
Check.
So you get to 18 years old and you're like, all right, I guess I'm going to do the law. I'm not going to do medicine.
Not even 18. I literally just went to college. I went to...
Did you skip grades?
No, I just was like a little bit on the younger side. So
okay.
I graduated when I was 17 and went to Berkeley as an environmental science major, hilariously. And then I ended up taking a bunch of English and poli-sci classes. So I ended up double majoring in English poli-sci.
Did you enjoy your classes in college?
I loved it, yeah. I loved English. I was such an English nerd.
Interesting.
I was also I think I was like a pretentious little shit when I was in undergrad. I had nothing but disdain for other undergrads. And I was like, ugh, everyone wants to drink. Who wants to talk about Zizek with me? Who's read the latest Slavoj Zizek?
I think, pre-meds were too. I was a little bit of an asshole as well. So did you hang out with other pre-meds?
I had a couple friends who were doing pre-med, and I only decided to really go for law school after I graduated. I was never one of those people that was like, I know I want to go to law school. I really envied people who knew what they wanted to do for a very long time.
So you kind of feel like you have no idea what you want to do. You're just gonna pursue poli-sci and English, not really sure what you're gonna do with that degree, right? You just kind of enjoyed it though.
Yeah. I felt like I was good at it and that it resonated with me, like writing, and just critical thinking and analysis, I never thought it would lead to law, which is, in hindsight, very unintuitive of me to like not really see that coming. But then when I moved to DC after undergrad to do some internships, and that's when I realized that law school was...
Oh, you liked it? You liked the internships?
Yeah.
Ah.
I worked for a couple of think tanks. One was... I did a lot of like campaign finance reform stuff, and that's sadly not a thing anymore since money is speech and unlimited money can be funneled into politics now.
Wow.
So that the Supreme Court decisions of yesteryear played a big role in that. And then I also did a Middle Eastern policy internship in DC. So I was really into like Middle Eastern
culture,
politics.
Oh, politics.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that type in policy.
Yeah.
So I was either going to do like public policy or law.
Public policy or law.
Yeah.
All right. So then the decision comes and you apply to law school. You take your LSATs and you proceed. And where do you go to school?
I went back to Berkeley.
Berkeley. Wow. You need an LSAT of 172 or something for that?
I don't know what the minimum LSAT was.
Yeah.
I just, I mean, I was surprised. I felt like probably maybe going to undergrad at Berkeley was like in my favor because there were
true.
So maybe because there's some like schools that don't like to keep you for undergrad and overgrad. This seems like a podcast for current 16-year-olds applying to college.
So far it does.
So everyone study up and email your college essays to this and I'll proofread for a small fee.
Well, I went to the Berkeley of the East. That's what I call it.
What's that?
UVA.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
How'd you like it?
I hated it.
I remember you said that you
absolutely
were from Virginia.
I absolutely despised it, but I stayed there for 13 years. So
it's amazing how we will stay in things. I wonder if you have this belief ingrained in you. I believe that suffering, I call that immigrant currency.
Yeah.
Where it's just sort of like, if you suffer this much or this much, then you can trade it in for like what you actually want to do.
There may be some rewards.
Yeah. And so I just assumed that I just anticipated suffering all the time. So I was like, oh yeah, no, this is not a big deal if you hate your life or yourself. That's a given. So like 13 years in Virginia, of course, you know? So
Yeah.
I wonder, did you have that same?
I think so. I was like, well, I can't really get in anywhere else, so I'll just stick around here for a while.
I mean, you could do a lot worse than UVA.
Yeah.
It's a great school. And
Nobody knows that in the West Coast, that it's a great school.
yeah. In California, UVA is uva, which means grape. They're like, yeah. I knew it was a great school because I was going to go to George Washington for law school, actually.
There's a lot of great law schools
Yeah.
there in that center.
Yeah.
But you enjoyed your time
Yeah.
as a lawyer for
I
a
love
little
law
bit
school,
before.
yeah.
You liked law school?
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't
You like to
regret it.
study.
There's so many people who are like, oh God, it was horrible and I shouldn't have done it. I will never regret going to law school, and I am very happy with, I'm sorry if this is not quite the content you wanted, but I'm happy with the path that as it ended up unfolding. But I think that there are a lot of people who like wish they had a time machine to do things earlier. I don't think I would have had the confidence or the courage or the mental and financial stability to be a comic. Not that they're known for their mental stability, but I don't think I would have been able to do it and have the courage to do it if I didn't have that experience beforehand.
Absolutely. I mean, I think about that too. Like if I hadn't become a doctor of a blood bank and a director, like I wouldn't be the same person in my 20s. Like I was an insecure little brat. Mm-hmm. I couldn't come out here. I probably would have been drunk and had heroin, in my body all the time. I don't know.
Our parents were right is basically
Exactly. How long were you a lawyer? Did you stay in California?
I did. Well, actually, for 1 year I clerked for a federal judge in D.C., and then I came back here and practiced for 7 years and change. So all in all, 8 and change years.
Were your parents ever proud of you for doing law?
Yeah, they were proud of me. I think they were just like proud that I was working hard and trying. And I don't think they thought I needed to be disciplined or encouraged because I had already been hard on myself as it is.
Yeah.
I think they were like, all right, like they were uncharacteristically like, lighten up, be easy on yourself a little bit. But that's because I was mom and dad up here. And so
7 years in law.
7-year itch.
7-year itch. What type of law was it?
I first did commercial litigation and then I did employment law.
And you've enjoyed all 7 years of it? Or was there a time where you felt like, I don't want to do
every last
this?
minute of it? No, just kidding.
Am I putting words in your mouth?
A little. This is, in the law, we'd call these leading questions. You enjoyed your time, yes? Yes or no? It'd be the worst podcast ever, just yes or no questions. This has been close-ended questions with Ash T. Thank you very much. No, I mean, like, at the end of the day, I was doing big law. So
what is big law? I don't understand.
Big law is when you work for a big law firm and they own your life and your time, and if you do anything for yourself, you feel like you're getting away with murder.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so that's like more, I enjoyed a lot of it and it was interesting, and I learned a lot of valuable lessons about life and substantive law. However,
Were you on track to be partner? That's the only thing I know about.
No.
Okay.
No, I never wanted to be a partner.
Okay.
I just liked working hard and writing, and I wasn't as drinky of the Kool-Aid. Some people like really wanted to be partner, and they're like, yeah, I'm all about this company and we're family, and until you actually need time off to be a human being, and then you're not so much family. I don't know. It's just, and it's not at my particular law firms. I think it's just the culture of big law in general. Like, you ask anybody who's doing big law, and they will tell you that that is what you eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you sleep when you're not doing that. And it's just takes up a huge amount of your life. It is your whole life.
Yeah. How many hours are you working a week at that time?
I mean, it depends on, it would always ebb and flow, but like, in the most intense moments, like, for example, when I went to trial in 2017, we were billing like 18 hours a day.
Wow.
For like 2 weeks.
Oh my
straight.
gosh.
So like, that's maddening, right?
Yeah.
There's only so much you're like all adrenalized and stuff, and it's interesting. It's actually the most fun I've ever had was being part of trial, because you get to only focus on that. But then it really does, like, you can't have a life apart from that if you're like really immersed in it.
Wow, I didn't realize that. My job as a doctor was not that intense. I was probably working 10 hours a month.
Really?
Yeah.
10 hours a month?
Yeah.
What would you do with the rest of your time?
I would like read scripts. I would
Oh, nice. Okay.
or I would write research. Like I did a lot of medical research, so I did a lot of that.
So did you feel like so one of the reasons why extricating myself from that, realm was necessary is like I just didn't have any bandwidth
to do anything
else. Did you feel like you could still kind of practice or take acting classes or do like work on your craft while? Yeah,
I had a lot of time.
So it was a matter of location, not necessarily time.
Yeah, I think so. But also anything that you do in life, I feel like you got to give it 100%. Even 95% is not enough. Right. So I thought if I really want to do this acting thing and I want to make it my career, I have to move to Los Angeles, because I was in Houston.
Right.
That's the other thing. And
Little Hollywood, as we call it.
little Hollywood.
So little, you can't even feel it.
Right. But I mean, the hours that you work, geez, I mean, that's intense.
Right. And it wasn't like I was doing that for 7 years straight. I mean, but there were those days or weeks or months where you were expected to be in the office for at least 12 hours a day. And that's just what you're doing. And it was kind of like, at some point I realized, like, okay, I could go to the gym, I could maybe go on a date, I could go cook dinner, or I could sleep early, but I only get to choose one of those things and be a full-time lawyer. So
that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, huh?
I think the straw that broke the camel's back was the pandemic.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Just like being so insanely isolated. And like, I was living in San Francisco at the time by myself, and just being in an apartment and only doing the law and they know you have nowhere else to be.
Wow.
So you're like, oh, this is, I don't want to compare it to a prison because that's not fair to people actually in prison, but it felt weird when you were in lockdown. You're like, I can't leave. And then, you know, you have people at your place of business knowing that you have nowhere else to be, so expecting that you're actually devoting even more time to the law in a global pandemic during an insurrection. And you're like, oh, this is it. Basically, like, I'm sure anyone felt this way working in an office in January 2020. Like, we were all that cartoon dog on fire saying this is fine, because everyone was like, just keep going. We were like, but they're storming the Capitol right now. And like, I'm sure I'm not the first person to say this, but like, it really did feel like we were the string quartet on the Titanic. And then somebody was just yelling at us to be like, we're booked till 10, keep fucking going, you know, like, we're like, oh, okay. And then at a certain point, I just was like, I need to take a break from my mental health. And then that break ended up being me
getting away from law completely. So when you decided to take a break, what did you tell the firm? Did you say, I'm out of here for a little bit of time?
I needed professional, real leave of absence. Wow. Yeah, I took a leave of absence. It was that bad. So, yeah. I think like that was...
And then what happened?
And then, you know, I mean, it was still the pandemic. And then eventually I left the firm. I moved back down to LA because I was just like, I need to take a break and allow for there to be like breathing room. And since then, this was like a year ago that I've been in LA. So I guess last July, so a year and change.
And what did you do with, now that you have all this free time, from having no free time?
Right.
To now having all this free time, what did you do with that?
I've been doing writing, comedy, and voiceover.
Have you been writing since you were a kid, or was it something that came up after?
I've been writing since I was a kid, but never like thinking I would want to be a writer.
Yeah. What type of writing did you do?
When I was a kid?
Well,
oh, just terrible, terrible stories. Not plausible stories that you could see right through, and just being like, oh, what is this trash? I remember I wrote like a short novella when I was in 6th grade about like a serial killer, and it turned out to be the butler. And I thought it was this great unraveling mystery. And then when I reread it, I'm like, the first page is like, it's the butler. What a piece of trash this was. Just critiquing childhood writing is my favorite thing to do. So, yeah. And I've also just been spending a lot of time with family. And then when I'm not doing all that, I'm in traffic driving. As you know.
Did you feel like it was a complete change when you started to get in touch with writing again?
Yeah. I thrive on structure. So it's still hard for me to like not have somewhere to be every single morning at 9 a.m. You know what I mean? I liked that.
Have you developed structure now that you have a lot of free time?
How do I develop it?
Yeah.
I mean, I go through like ebbs and flows where I'll have a routine and I'll set my alarm, and I will, and then sometimes I won't. And it kind of depends on the circumstances of whatever's going on.
Mm. Okay, well, how did you get into stand-up comedy? When was the first time that you stepped foot into that arena?
So what's funny about this is, even though I didn't know I didn't actually think of it as being a plausible thing, but I do remember I had like a recovered memory of being 15 and telling my friend that I loved comedy and wanted to be a stand-up comedian. And then I was like, but if you tell anyone, I'll deny it and I'll hate you forever, because I was so embarrassed and ashamed.
You were ashamed of being a stand-up comic?
I was so ashamed like that I wanted to do comedy, because once you say you want to do that, you're basically admitting that you think you're funny enough and that you think you're funny, as opposed to just being like incidentally effervescent and charming, and people being like, oh my gosh, what a not boring lawyer. And I just like forgot that I said that to her and realized I was like, oh yeah, I have always loved comedy. I've always loved stand-up. I've always watched comedy and sketch that was far beyond what was appropriate, but I had older siblings, so my sister especially was always watching SNL, so we would be watching comedy that was not appropriate for us. So, did that answer your question? What was your question?
Well, when did you start?
Oh, when did I start? Oh, I did my first open mic in 2018.
What prompted you to do that? Was that like when you're taking the break, you're like, you know what?
No, I hadn't taken a break yet. I was still practicing law.
Oh, you were still practicing law.
Yeah. So I had met a friend of a friend who was doing stand-up, and he ran an open mic. And so I was like gearing up the courage to do like my first 5 minutes or whatever. I didn't know.
And you never took a class?
No. I didn't know that open mics were like a way to work out jokes and you just show up and you kind of like talk about stuff and try stuff out. I was treating it like it was a true type 5. So I spent months writing down 5-minute sets and like reworked it. And then I was like, all right, I'm ready. And then like I timed it on a timer and I made sure and I like practiced in front of the mirror and then I went up and did it.
Type A law stuff.
Type A, absolutely. I approached comedy like a lawyer, which is kind of what I still do a little bit. And like I just did it and it went really well. And
your first time went really well.
Yeah.
Okay, I completely bombed my first time and second and third.
What was your like? Like you started acting. Like what? How did you get from acting to stand up?
I think I wanted to hone my comedic voice a little bit. There was actually a guy, John D'Apolito, that I'd been learning from, and he said, "What do you really want in life?" And I was thinking, I remember when Ace Ventura was out and Dumb and Dumber and The Mask with Jim Carrey. And I remember seeing Jim Carrey going to these award ceremonies, cracking everybody up. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I just want to go to award ceremonies and crack people up. What did he do?
Have you considered working for E?
I know, right? I have.
Being a red carpet person.
That would be fun.
That'd be cool.
I want to do that, E. Contact me.
Contact me. If you look directly at the camera, it's more convincing.
I know. But so that kind of inspired me to start stand-up comedy because I'd been scared of it. I was like, nah, there's no way I can make people laugh.
Right. It is a terrifying, insane thing.
Yeah.
I have friends who are like, this is my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Like somebody telling me to like, and I have some friends who still can't come and see me because they're like, the risk of failure is so high. I'm so uncomfortable watching other comedians. The secondhand embarrassment, if it didn't work out, was the stakes are too great for them in the audience. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's amazing how there are some people who just really have such an aversion to public speaking and it's very vulnerable. Like I had no problem, giving an oral argument because I was prepared and there's certain things, you're speaking on behalf of somebody else and you're like an advocate. But when you go out on stage as your own self and you're like, here are ideas and here's me, it's so much more vulnerable and there's so much it's so much more personal.
Oh, absolutely.
So that I found it a lot harder.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps with anything. It helps with my acting too. So I'm glad I did it.
Do you ever have to play a doctor?
Yeah.
Do you ever feel annoyed when you don't get a role for a doctor and you're just like, but I know how to do this?
No,
Okay.
I don't.
I would be really
I don't want to
annoyed.
play doctors anymore.
Oh, okay.
I like playing social media managers,
Okay.
things like that. Agents, lawyers, anything but doctors.
Anything but a doctor.
But I've been on Euphoria and Dead to Me as doctors, so. They do
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I stupidly didn't IMDb you before we got here, but.
You didn't stalk me.
I didn't.
All right.
This is like
fair enough.
They're like, good thing that she's not my lawyer. She didn't do her due diligence. No, I did. I watched your podcast, your seminal podcast, and I got a feel for what the vibe was. So that was.
And you decided to come on, but
yeah.
Why
not?
Well, okay, stand-up comedy. I'm going to go back and just try to weave through this story again. You decided not to go back to law after you had how many months off?
I took a leave of absence and then I went back and worked for almost another year. And
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I always it was hard. It was really hard to leave. It's really, really hard to take your identity out of that situation. It's also just like hard to conceive. It's like a big leap, as you know.
Oh yeah.
And it's terrifying, but
it's like a relapse. You're like, all right, let me go back to law, right?
I don't know if it was a relapse so much as like I guess I was in denial about whether I could keep doing it. whether it was like a sustainable thing for me personally.
Oh, law.
Yeah, or just big law, working at a law firm. So
so you gave it another try.
Yeah, and then I was like, nope, still losing my mind, still not okay, and then left.
How long did it take you to lose your mind again?
Another 9 months.
Another 9 months.
Yeah.
All right.
I gave birth to insanity in that 9 months, and yeah, that was kind of that part of it. I've done like some law things, like one-offs, but not in the context of like big law.
Yeah. How do you sustain your living now? Because you're kind of done with law for a little bit, right?
Yeah. The savings of having been a lawyer, and then also moving back to LA. My parents live here. My mom lives here. My dad just passed away, so I just sorry not to like drop that truth bomb, but so that's been one of the circumstances I alluded to in the last like 3 months. So it's just been a big adjustment, and so my family home is here, so I'm there right now, and I'm lucky. I'm glad my dad didn't settle in. He was almost went to Alabama, which was going to not be Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So wouldn't have gone back there if I was leaving the law. I probably would have stayed in San Francisco. Who knows? But
yeah, Alabama. That's not the best place for people like us.
It's true. Yeah. I don't think my dad knew about racism yet until he came to America. I think that's when he.
Have you been told to go back to your country?
Yeah, but that country is Mexico in there because they don't see me as, they're like, go away, you ambiguous Latina woman, and
that's Afghanistan for me. So.
Yeah, Afghanistan. Okay, yeah. Good, nice to meet you. Yeah, it's always just it's so funny how like people will be racist to you, but improperly.
I know.
Like, all right.
If you're gonna be racist, at least have command of geography.
I agree.
Yeah.
At least know.
Yeah.
So.
At least know. Do you feel like you can make a living as a stand-up and a writer? Are you writing sketches? Are you writing features? Like what other things do you do?
TV and sketch.
Okay, so you are dipping your toes in that.
Dipping in. The $1 million question, quite literally, can I sustain myself?
Yeah.
If I could, I would happily and do that. That'd be great. But I don't know. That's like a huge question. I feel like the market in the last few years, just the comedy game seems like it's changed quite a bit.
It has.
Especially like with TikTok, and there's different types of comedians. Some people are just TikTok comedians. I've heard of like, I don't remember who it was, but this person had like 1 million followers on TikTok or something and got a big venue and like sold out the venue.
Wow.
Turns out this person can't really do stand-up. Like, because they didn't really understand that doing clips and editing those quick edits and having these like fun little quips is very different than performing and sustaining an audience's attention over time and creating like a thematic or a narrative structure to whatever it is you have to say. It's a lot different.
Beautifully said.
Yeah. So you can't just be like, camera one, like, and just, you can't like edit in live time. So I think people don't realize that it's just a completely different art form than, and there's also an art to editing, like where some people are very funny on TikTok and that's its own skill set.
Yeah, it's a dialogue. You got to react with the audience, like if they don't like a joke, then you got to pivot and find something else that they would like, and you got to acknowledge it. And what I've really noticed is, the Jim Carrey humor probably would not work in 2022. Everybody wants like a genuine and authentic conversation. That's just the way I feel like on TV and doing stand up. Both, like they don't like these big characters. Like I've tried it. Really? It doesn't work.
Have you tried you tried impressions?
Yeah. Well, yeah, kind of like accents and stuff like that. Doesn't really work.
You know what? There are some people who do that very well, like Nick Mohammed as a character, and like that he does. And it's also interesting how different markets. Like I find UK, UK comedy is very different than
American. Totally dry.
Yeah, and there's also just people who do personas, and like sometimes they'll come out and do like the set is the person, kind of like almost not quite Andy Kaufman with Tony Clifton or whatever, but some people kind of branch off into that alty space, which is also very fun. I've been dabbling in
Is it working
those
for you?
edges. I've been doing it more so for example, like some clown stuff, like helping you get more in your body and embrace the physicality of comedy as opposed to just the cerebral element, which is what I usually rely on, perhaps too much.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of what we're best at, right?
Living from the neck up, 100%. Just like, that was like another fear of being in Hollywood. It's like, just look up here. Don't look at my body, please. I grew up in the 90s, heroin chic. That was like the style. That was not who I was. So it's hard not to like grow up with insane body dysmorphia. Although filters didn't exist yet. So I think it's like nobody can really escape it at this point. But it was especially insane in LA.
Yeah. Well, I have to say this has been an interesting episode because I don't think I can ask you the questions. What would you tell your, younger self about quitting law and becoming a comedian? Because that's not really the path that you chose. It was more from what I understand, is like, I just don't want to work, this many hours and not have a life.
Right.
Rather than like, I really love comedy and I want to do this for a living.
I think I could still answer your question.
Oh, okay.
So, part of it is one of the big things that helped me make the big leap is just having I'm sure you've heard of this, like a deathbed moment where you're like, am I going to regret this on my deathbed?
Oh, you did have that moment.
I did have a moment of like, if I don't do comedy if I live long enough to be, 80 or 90 and I'm on my deathbed thinking about what I would do differently, this would be a regret, 100%.
Oh,
so that was
Christie, I didn't get that out of the whole conversation until you said this.
Yeah. Well, it was something I guess I have not conveyed how much I really wanted to try and to do it because I thought I was funny. I like performing. I like being in a space where I'm not seen as too much. I think I couldn't be my full self when I was at a law firm. It was very professional. And even now I'm holding back with you right now just because I don't want to blow out the technician's ears with my booming voice. This is polite Sunday afternoon Christie. But boy, oh boy, Saturday night Christie is also just as annoying. So, but I mean, there is a huge desire, and I feel like there is an authenticity thing. There were times where, especially when the law part was very hard and you're just at your desk, the door has been closed and you haven't talked to anybody all day because you've been writing this brief. And I just remember thinking to myself, I'm too charming for this shit. Which is always a charming thing to say. So there was a part of me that's like, I want to interact with people. I want to have that connection and I want to emote and not have to always be keeping everything under wraps. And so there was that, like, if I don't do this, I'm going to regret it. Especially during the pandemic when all I was doing was working, and I was like, I better not die right now because what a terrible last 2 years this was.
What a terrible life it's been.
Right. I mean, it's not been a terrible life, but I mean, what a boring way to go out.
Yeah. I think that's what happened to me too. I just didn't want to regret. Like, what if the acting thing could have worked out? You know?
Right. And then it's just like, what is the worst that could happen? That it doesn't work out. Maybe you drain your savings. Maybe you end up being homeless. But
at least you tried.
Yeah, at least you tried. And there also isn't a certain amount of like trust in yourself where you have to be like, look back at the trajectory of your life and look at the evidence that shows that you actually wouldn't let yourself get to a point of homelessness. Like, let's be real, Christie. You went to Berkeley twice. You aren't going to like be like, oh no, I'm out of money, now I'm homeless. Like, you wouldn't get to that point and then just be taken off guard by being like out of everything,
Yeah.
So it's just sort of like, if I had to go back and tell myself this, I would say trust yourself a little bit more. And then also something that I heard from, do you know Stephen Bartlett? He's like a UK entrepreneur.
Yeah.
He's very big about like uncertainty being the necessary path towards something better. So one of the things that he said was, I don't know if this is him or if he was quoting somebody else, but he said that uncertainty is preferable to certain misery. And people do things to preserve certainty. And I was doing that for a very long time. And then it's like, what are you getting out of preserving your certainty if you're certain that you don't like what you're doing? Yeah, I'm certainly miserable, you know? And so why not walk through uncertainty if it at least gives you the possibility of something different? And of course the fear is, well, because at least I know that if I'm going to be this miserable, at least this is as miserable as I'm going to get. But you don't know that actually. It could get worse. And you think it's stability. But what person chooses a stable misery?
Absolutely. How do you grow as a human being if you don't test out the waters and see what you can handle? And that's what I've always tell people is you got to believe in yourself and not underestimate what you're capable of doing. You know, anybody.
I still struggle with that. I'm always like, at any moment, I could just be like, all right, never mind. You know, like,
yeah, I'm back to doing law.
It's really hard. You know, it's really hard to. It's hard to believe in yourself. It's so corny. It's so corny.
It is. It's corny and cheesy, but I am the king of cheese. And I think it's important to believe in yourself.
I also think that there's a certain amount of, and this is like another aversion to the entertainment industry I have, is that, you know, I can't remember who said this, but they say that LA is the only place where you can die of too much encouragement.
I haven't heard that.
So it's like everyone just believes in themselves and they're like, oh my God, my dreams, crystals, like the universe, you know, and then you're like, oh my God. So there is a part of me that is so turned off by unwarranted belief in, you know, whatever. And I'm trying to actually do that. It's great that I moved to LA now. And I do have crystals and stuff. And I'm like,
same.
Who am I? Who is this person? I don't recognize myself anymore. But I think that's good because I was very loyal to that very pragmatic, pessimistic version of myself because I equated pessimism with realistic credibility.
I mean, I couldn't have said it better. I mean, of course you're a lawyer. These words are magical that you're spitting. I'm just like, believe in yourself. And you're like, pragmatic realism and unwarranted. And I'm like, whoa, cool, great words.
But
I love it.
Well, you tell me this. Like, when you saw somebody be like, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and you just saw them talk a lot and it looked like they weren't informed and it looked like they were just talking a big game about what they're gonna do, and you'd be like, all right. Totally. I'm always so afraid of being that person.
Yeah.
I don't want to be this like pie in the sky.
It's about action. I'm always about action. As speaks louder than your words. What are you actually doing?
Right.
Rather than like just shouting at the top of the lungs, you know, at the mountain, like, I can do anything.
Right.
Well, let's see you do it, buddy.
There are always people, who are like, I'm on to some next level shit. So next level, I can't even talk about it. And I'm like, but you're still talking to me about it. I wish you'd shut up.
Yeah.
But I think the pendulum has swung even farther for me where I'm like, not only action, but also doubt yourself every step of the way so that if you fail, you already called this. And then you get to be like, good job, me. We saw this coming. That doesn't help.
I completely have unwarranted belief in myself now.
Do you think that's a male confidence thing, or is it like why do you have unwarranted belief in yourself?
I think because I've seen the stuff that I've done now, like over the past 4 years. So
then it's not unwarranted.
Yeah,
it's warranted because you're paying attention to the fact that you were like, oh no, actually, I have done certain really cool things. That's actually that's a great point, me. No, I meant to say just like that's a great skill that you've learned is to like celebrate your wins, which is hard to do.
You're still struggling with that. Yeah. But you have a lot of wins. You've got a lot of comedy shows coming up. Tell us more about what you have lined up now.
I have a bunch of shows coming up. I usually go up north to San Francisco and Oakland once a month to like be part of both markets at Bay Area and LA because I started comedy up there. I just did my second cold open at the Hollywood Improv, which was really fun.
Let's see, big deal. I've seen your comedy. It's hilarious.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. But then at the same time, even during that day, it was like on Thursday, and I was like, oh my God, and I saw my name, And then on the same lineup, it was Nikki Glaser and Craig Robinson. And I was like, oh my God, these are like my heroes. But then I also had this voice that was like, pipe down. Like, this is not that big of a deal. This means nothing. You're a nobody to these people. It doesn't matter. And I was like, but celebrate your wins. I don't know. I had like a Jekyll and Hyde thinking the whole time. And I was like really excited and wanted to celebrate. But then I was like, this is unreasonable. You know, like.
I think that's to protect ourselves, you know.
Also, I don't want to like be walking around like. It's not that big of a dick to be swinging around like, hey, what's up, buddies?
Yeah.
While people were walking in and still being seated, I addressed the audience and did 5 minutes. It's like, that's what a cold open is like people, it's called cold because people are not warmed up and they just sat down and they're like, what is this? You know? So you're out there. And so there is a part of it that's like, all right, this isn't, you know, fucking the Apollo. You're not doing a sold out show at Carnegie Hall. Like, you know, so it's always about like keeping your ego in check for me.
I've done a 5-minute cold at the Hollywood Improv, at the Lab. I bombed, and then after that, it's just been traumatic. I'm like, I don't think I can go back there again.
Scene of the crime.
Yeah. So.
When was that? How long ago?
Gosh, it was about 2 months ago. But I'll go back there just because I have to face the fear eventually.
Absolutely. This is now your new.
My new mountain to climb.
Yeah, this is your new Rocky montage.
Right.
You're just going to be on the steps of. I guess they don't have steps at the Hollywood Improv. You'll be running around in circles in that courtyard. Eye of the Tiger playing.
I get a lot of anxiety now before I do stand-up because I think I just killed at this show. Now I got to continue to perform or people will think I'm terrible.
Right. That's always a big thing. Yeah. I think that's probably, I mean, I have not done screen acting, so maybe you can tell me this, but do you feel like it's at the same with actors where you're like, oh, that person's not even a good actor, and like blah blah blah, and I have to do this well, or else everyone's going to think I'm bad? Because I know that when it's comedy, people are like, I don't want everyone to think I'm not funny.
No, I think because I'm still not comfortable as a stand-up comedian. Like, I'm comfortable as an actor. I know that I'm very good at it and that I can always deliver. But a stand-up comedy, I'm just like, I could bomb at any moment.
Right. And it's hard because there's a lot that's not in your control.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess when you're acting, there's no, you know, if there's a director and there's lighting and there's so many variables.
You have multiple takes, you know.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
You can't do multiple takes live before a studio audience.
Yeah, exactly.
But I will bring canned laughter and a laugh track.
I'll bring my friends.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's it's a completely different nerve-wracking experience. But you still keep going back there. Is it a pride thing or is it because you genuinely enjoy it and you like get a rush and you like it?
Go back to stand-up?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something, I follow my inner voice now, which is something I never did as a doctor. Like, I meditate a lot, and it just keeps telling me, go back to stand-up comedy. There's something in it for you, and just keep going up, keep facing your fears until you have no more fears. I'm big on that. Always doing something that I'm uncomfortable with, and I'm still uncomfortable doing stand-up comedy, so I keep going back to it. I'm
always uncomfortable.
You're uncomfortable at this
right
podcast.
I'm very uncomfortable right now. Right. I'm just kidding. That's interesting. So what kind of meditation do you do?
It's like 20 minutes each, and it's just breathing through my nose and out through my mouth. It's something that I learned from yogas in India. And I just follow the breath, and that's it. And then when I'm done with it, I just come up with a lot of ideas. So
nice. Any mantras?
Nope. I'm just focusing on the air coming in through my nose and out and into my lungs and then out. And I'm just visualizing that back and forth for 20 minutes.
Oh my God, that sounds great.
Yeah.
You should have like a special bonus episode that's just you breathing into the mic. I
think they've got plenty of that.
It's like, who's this ASMR bitch?
Right. Well, this has been a super fascinating podcast, this episode. Do you have anything else to say, or do you want to end on that? Any words of inspiration to people, or are you like, nah, I dropped enough bombs of knowledge. Pow.
I mean, listen to yourself, and if you can't hear what the voice is, then that means you need to go somewhere quieter. Really?
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's end on that.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.